Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're tuning into this session. My name is Bree Lazarchuk, and thank you so much for joining me for this session about education for justice, both a calling and a resource. So this session is about the Justice Resource Center provided through the Ignatian Solidarity Network. So thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to hopefully connecting with you virtually or in some way at the end of this session after you watch. So thank you again, and let's get started. So a little bit about me before we begin. Double face. My name is Bree Lazarchuk, and I am a graduate of John Carroll University. I have a degree in economics and also a minor in Catholic Studies from John Carroll. I got my master's at the Harvard Graduate School of Education in 2018. My master's is in education policy and management. I started my teaching career at St. Martin de Porres High School, which is the Cristo Rey High School in Cleveland, Ohio. I taught English and theology there, and now I currently teach theology at Gilmore Academy, also in the suburbs of Cleveland in Gates Mills. I've taught 9th and 11th grade theology during my time at Gilmore. Two pieces of contact information for me are at the bottom of this slide, but please know at any time you can also use the swap card, the presentation platform, to connect with me as well. So before we begin the details of this session shared by me, I do want to open with a little bit of reflection. And for this reflection, I am anchoring it in the pastoral circle, which is the method of reflection that is used throughout the Education for Justice Resource Center. It follows the course of experience, analysis, reflection, and action. Many of you might be familiar with this. It has many names. It serves many purposes, both within a theological education context and elsewhere. So I just want to take a moment and ask you to pause, close your eyes. You can take your hands off the keyboard, settle in a little bit. And I want you to think about your experience that you've had trying to educate for justice. It's a really big idea, right? We all maybe try to do it in different ways in our different roles. That's what led us here. But reflect on, what are your experiences educating for justice? What types of justice do you try to educate about? Who do you educate in this role? Moving into the analysis phase, how does it typically go for you when you try to educate for justice? Do you find that it is an energizing experience? Do you feel that it's something that people tend to receive well? Do you feel like it's something you wish you were better at? Start to analyze maybe some of your strengths and weaknesses in this area of educating for justice. And now move into the reflection phase. What do you need to become a better educator for justice? What types of grace, courage, tangible resources do you need in order to become better at inspiring and educating the people who you work with, who you serve? You may construct this in the form of a prayer as well as you reflect. And finally, what action can you take? Hopefully, this session can become one of those first action steps in helping you become a better educator for justice. That's really my main goal here, to share my experience and hope that it inspires you in some way. But as you walk through this session and beyond, consider what action steps you may need to become empowered in this way. So thank you for taking the time for that short reflection. And again, I hope it shapes and animates your experience with this session as we go through. So what is Education for Justice? Education for Justice is a subscription-based resource center that is a project of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, who are our wonderful, gracious hosts for this virtual conference. And there are a variety of resources available through this resource center that can be used for anything from kind of instant reflection to more long-term planning in an Education for Justice context. Who is it for? Education for Justice has a range of membership programs that I'm going to talk about at the end, but it really is for any organization, churches, schools, congregations, diocesan offices, any sort of group interested in this work, especially from a Catholic perspective. can benefit from the broad diversity of resources available here. And I'm going to take a minute now to show you a little bit around the site so that you can see sort of what I'm centering this conversation around. And then I will get into telling you a little bit more about how I use these resources. So here's the Education for Justice site, rooted in, the call from the Catholic Church to respond to the signs of the times. If you're not familiar with that phrase, it's the idea that our world is constantly adapting and changing, and it is one of the tasks of the church, of church leaders, to respond to current events, to respond to the needs of the world in the context of the church's social tradition and the other central pieces of our faith. And so this website is very easy to use and navigate. First, you can navigate by topic, so you can see the different content on this site is sorted by both the principles of Catholic social teaching, various social justice topics, as well as a few of other categories. There are also resources available in Spanish. You can also search by type of materials. So the site offers activities, book discussions, inserts for bulletins, which are sent out regularly. They offer a calendar, different pedagogical resources, including quizzes, reflections, full units, film discussions, lectionary reflections, as well as litanies, prayers, and prayer services. So as you can see, depending on the context in which you work, there's really resources on EFJ available for everyone. I will share as well that EFJ also sends out a monthly email with, again, in the spirit of the signs of the times, what are the major church holidays coming up? What are the feast days? And they provide current reflections for those times within the month as well, which is really wonderful. So that's a basic overview of the site. And now I'm going to offer you a little bit of my reflections on how I've used it in my role as a theology teacher, as well as provide some additional context for ways you could use it in your work if you are not a teacher or hoping to become one or things like that. So the first and easiest way to use EFJ is on the fly, right? So you can use these resources to respond to current events in your classroom or your community. And entry points can really be anywhere in the pastoral cycle. Maybe your students have just completed a service project and you want to then come back to the classroom and pray about those affected by food insecurity. Maybe something has happened in the world and you want to open your class with a meaningful but perhaps brief reflection on whatever that something might be. So a way I've used this is for opening prayers. So let's say that something has happened in the world. Let's say, for instance, there's been an act of gun violence that's recently gathered, attention. So what you can do is you can actually search the site. And if we search, we can search for gun violence as a topic. And one of the first things that will pop up is prayer, remembering all those who lost their lives to gun violence, prayer for students against gun violence, choosing the path of peace. So a whole assortment of prayers, as well as other lesson plans and resources related to gun violence. So let's say I wanted to use this prayer in class, just open it up. I can download the PDF. I can also preview the resource here in the Resource Center. And then I could open my class with this prayer and it would be very quick, but also very meaningful. Just so you know, as far as distributing the resources goes, Education for Justice licenses are set up so that you can share with your students or some colleagues, make copies, but what Education for Justice asks is that these resources are not made available publicly. And I'll talk a little bit more about how membership levels work at the end of this session, but just something that you would be wondering as I show you this. So that is one way you can use these resources that I've definitely found has been really helpful as I've gone through my teaching career. The next thing that you can use EFJ resources for are, of course, lesson planning. So if you, as I showed you before under materials, Education for Justice offers lesson plans as well as unit plans. So if we click under lesson plans, and that's just the type, you can see a whole variety of lesson plans: peace and nonviolence, healthcare, human rights, immigration reform, mental illness, the challenges of peace, gun violence again. And so if you are looking for lesson plans, a specific way to structure your class day, you can find that here, depending on the topic. And again, fully searchable, all these resources. Or the unit resources are another great place to go. So these unit resources, I can just kind of show you one. These unit resources have actual, informational sheets, ways in which you could structure your classes, and different resources that build on one another. So EFJ can also be really helpful for building out, lesson arcs. If you are teaching the themes of Catholic social teaching, also, as you saw under topics, all of the Catholic social teaching themes are tagged with these different resources as well. So that's another great way that EFJ can be used in your classroom. Another way is through supplemental knowledge. So I just showed you the one that has some actual handouts and reading material. And EFJ resources can be used to supplement larger projects and learning goals for both students and community members. So perhaps you're hosting a roundtable in your parish, or an education night, or even maybe you're teaching an RCIA class or a PSR class and you're trying to bring justice content into that conversation. This is a great place to begin. One way I've used it, so when I was in graduate school, I created a semester-long curriculum called Catholic Social Teaching and Racial Justice in America. If you're interested in learning more about this curriculum as well, I'm happy to share and send it to you. It's in the process of being updated, but I'm definitely always happy to engage in dialogue about this extremely important work. But one of the things that my partner and I did for this project was incorporate Education for Justice resources into this curriculum. So much of this curriculum was our original work of fusing anti-racist pedagogy with the themes of Catholic social teaching. But at certain points, we needed to incorporate things like papal encyclicals to give a foundation or a background in this curriculum. So another resource that EFJ has are outlines and explainers on the different encyclicals written by the popes that form the foundation of Catholic social teaching. So again, just one example of many to help to supplement larger curriculum goals. Another example I can offer, from ninth grade theology is perhaps you might be teaching natural revelation. EFJ has a lot of great resources on the Catholic social teaching theme of care for creation. So maybe you wanted to use, information about the church teaching on care for creation in the context of the ninth grade curriculum with natural revelation. So just another example of how EFJ resources can be really great supplements for existing content you have in your class. Finally, one other way that I love to use this is within your existing pedagogy. So you can search the site in many ways that I have demonstrated, and you can incorporate the resources into your existing classroom activities. One example is this is a discussion guide from based on a TED Talk called The Economic Injustice of Plastic. This TED Talk by Van Jones goes into detail about how low-income communities are disproportionately affected by the production and use of plastic, not only because of the pollution that the disposal of plastic causes, the manufacturing of plastic, but also economic choice and how plastic tends to be one of the cheapest things that we have access to. But, given that it causes disproportionate harm to low-income communities, that also means that maybe more harmful products are coming into people's homes. And so it's a really thought-provoking TED Talk I've used for instruction many times. Of course, this plan can be used as is. It cycles through the pastoral circle with different types of questions. But what I've done with this is my students, we have ongoing journals that we write throughout the year. So I was hoping to incorporate a new journal entry. We had just learned about Catholic social teaching in class. So I assigned them this video. I linked it to my learning management system. And then I picked a few, there's so many reflection questions here. They really do a great job of giving many dimensions of the issue. So I pulled a few of these questions and I incorporated them into the journal assignment that my students were working on. And I pulled a few more to have as a class discussion the following day. So these resources are really abundant in their versatility too. Again, a link to a video and a series of questions can be constructed as a worksheet, an in-class discussion, even a seminar, depending on the level at which you hope to approach learning for your students. Of course, the fact that these resources are virtual are especially helpful now, as many of us are doing virtual or semi-virtual instruction as well. One other ongoing project that I have been partnering with the Ignatian Solidarity Network on is the alignment of the Education for Justice resources with the USCCB curriculum standards. So one map that we made during virtual learning was a map for Elective C Catholic Social Teaching. because EFJ is so anchored in Catholic social teaching, we were able to put this one together pretty quickly, but we are hoping to continue our work to build them out. And I'm in the process of working on maps for Core 1 and Core 2. So like my natural revelation example, additional ways to incorporate social justice and social justice resources into all levels of our Catholic high school curriculum, and not just, our singular elective on Catholic social teaching. So that's an ongoing project. If you have any interest in collaborating with this project or helping build it out, please contact me or Brenna Davis, who's our Education for Justice site manager. But it's something that I'm really passionate about. I believe there is much more room for justice incorporation and integration in the way we teach theology at all levels, and that is also part of what grounds and motivates my work in promoting EFJ today. So just wanted to mention this project, and again, please feel free to share your thoughts if you have any willingness to contribute or help out with this piece. So information about membership, if you're interested, if this presentation has sparked your interest, there are a range of membership levels to become a member of Education for Justice. The membership tiers are here. They're also explained in more detail at educationforjustice.org/become-a-member. So anything from an individual to an organizational membership. As I mentioned, we ask that memberships are accurately reflective of the number of people in your organization who would like to use the site. With a membership, like I said, you can share the resources internally with students or colleagues, but we ask that these resources are not necessarily made publicly available, as we hope to uphold the membership system. But 2,200 resources in this resource library, many easily, almost immediately shareable for use in the context in which you use them. So a really worthwhile investment. I've been an EFJ member for several years, and as I've shown, I've been able to use it in many different ways throughout my time as an educator, as well as a student and a member of many different communities. So I would love to remain connected with those of you who have watched this session. So first, Brenna Davis, again, she is the Education for Justice supervisor at the Ignatian Solidarity Network. Brenna and I will be hosting a live Q&A on Tuesday, October 20th from 7 to 8 EST. So please, if you can join me for that, I would love to chat more, meet those of you who are interested in Education for Justice, and you can join via Zoom. You can also reach out to me on the Swap Card platform, the online platform for this conference. You're welcome to email me directly as well. One other way I'd love to stay connected with those of you in attendance is I have a Google form for you guys to offer some feedback on this session, as well as keep in touch. So the form looks like this. If you go to tinyurl/EFJ2020, you'll see this form. I'd love to know the email addresses of those of you who have attended, as well as any additional contact information you might want to share. Then just a few quick feedback questions about this session. I'd love to know if you're joining us on October 20th and any other feedback you have. Once you submit this form, it will also resend you the direct link to become a member of Education for Justice. By completing this form, I will send you this reflection on the economic injustice of plastic. So one free resource for you and your communities just by participating in this session and offering your information to connect with me. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to engage in this session with me. I hope that it's inspired you to continue to deepen the work for justice that you do in your different settings. And most importantly, I absolutely hope to hear from you, meet you virtually, network with you on the online platform. The work of the Ignatian Solidarity animates and motivates a lot of what I do in my role, as well as my professional aspirations. And I'm always interested in connecting with people who work in that same spirit. So thank you again so much. My prayers are with you and your families and your community as we navigate this very confusing year, but I hope that the teach-in overall is life-giving for you. And thanks again.